Welcome to the Dom Sub Devotion Podcast. Every episode of Dom Sub Devotion is an authentic reflection of our real life in a loving 24/7 DS marriage. If you crave the passion and intensity of a power exchange dynamic inside of a deeply loving and intimate relationship, you've found the right place. You can always find more from us in the show notes and at infinitedevotion.com. Thank you for listening.
So we are back with part 2 of the Ask a Sub Q&A.
Yes.
And, we always get a lot of questions when we put it out there for people. And we were just saying how it's not a surprise that we get a lot of questions when we do solicit them. But we were really particularly impressed with the number of questions that people sent in and with how really good they were this time around.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give a big high five to all of our followers, all of our watchers, listeners who sent in the questions. Thank you. You gave us so many of them that we had to do 2 whole episodes to get to all the good ones.
Yeah, I seriously love these kind of podcasts.
Yeah. It really is my favorite too, because we get, like I said in the intro to part 1, we get to talk about the things that people really want to hear. And that's why we do this. We want to help people have a better experience of their own life. So,
yes.
Shall we pick up where we left off last week with the second half?
Yes.
And this is going to be the slightly sexier half of the questions.
Ooh, this is fun.
We'll get to that. We're going to start, though, with a question that someone sent in who said, do you have close friends that you can go to who understand your lifestyle and dynamic? And if so, how do you deal with comparison of different journeys?
Yes. So we have one couple friend who we love you guys so much. There was a point where we didn't have anybody, but we do. And comparison isn't a thing for me. And this kind of applies to any piece of life. And of course, I used to do that, right? Unconsciously, under fear of what other people are thinking and what if that, what if this, whatever else. But when you truly desire to attune, like this is my desire, when I've truly desired to attune to my own soul, my own soul's experience, along with following you in the vision that you set for us, the way you're leading me and us together, like there isn't room for comparison.
Because nobody else matters.
Right. In my opinion, like this is all about my life experience, your life experience, and ours together, and how great we can make this. And so, yeah, there's just no room for comparison. There's no reason, the way I see it.
When you approach this in the way that we do, and our friends who we're talking about here, who also approached this in a very similar way.
Right.
They're the first people we've ever met who really go at this in the same way that we do. Now, they're newer together than we are. They're newer in their dynamic together. So like they're at a different stage of their relationship than we are. But that's cool. Like it's fun.
Yep.
Because we get to share some of where we are. And in some ways it kind of shows what's possible. And also they might be able to learn from some of our mistakes.
Yeah.
And we get to kind of see them and witness them and hold them and reassure them in some cases when they're in some of the more challenging things that come earlier that have to be worked through. Like we get to be there for them and all of that. And so it's not about comparison so much as it is, it really is a witnessing. Like we get to be seen. We have somebody who can see us and hear us, where we can just be all, like, everything of what we are without having to hold anything back. And they're high-fiving us, and they can do the same, and we're just there high-fiving them. And it, comparison doesn't even enter the picture in it from my perspective at all. It's really just, it's honestly extremely deep gratitude
Yes.
to even have them in our lives, because like you said, we didn't for a long time. And there's a certain freedom and value in being able to be witnessed and to be able to give witness to others in something that can be kind of isolating because it's different and it's unique and it's individual.
Right. Yes. Deep gratitude.
The next question, I'm assuming, is from someone else, but it kind of piggybacks on the same topic, where somebody asks, do your friends and family understand your dynamic, and how long did it take for them to accept it?
Um, I'm just thinking about the word understand. Because that again, you know, we were married for 8 years before you even asked me to be your submissive and wear a collar. I've never been asked by a family member what that is. Um, Nor I'm trying to think of if any of the people we've really hung around, like one of them called it out because he knew what it was. I remember that. But
Very loudly in a restaurant at a table full of other people who didn't know.
yeah, and I was at the opposite end of the restaurant. It was just fun because the way I was like, yeah, it's a
Like,
collar. You're
like,
right.
are we really going here now?
Yeah,
Okay, I
like
guess we
sure.
are.
And yeah, because that was more of a friend that we had just met, what, the second time or something, or maybe even the first time.
Yeah.
No, second time.
Yes, this was a bigger group of people that we knew, a couple of them fairly well, and a lot of them were fairly new acquaintances, but they were a really open-minded, fun group of people, like a
Yeah,
really non-judgmental group of people.
yeah,
And it was a pretty, um, obviously you wear a collar 24/7 in public.
yeah.
You're not afraid to talk about it.
No, yeah. So anyway, uh, circle of friends, to be honest, we don't have a large circle of friends. So like people have come and gone in our lives. Um, as for family, they've seen it. They've also witnessed the love and the relationship that we've always had. And they admire us. Like I feel admired by some of our family. Um, and just genuinely care about us. And they don't pry and ask questions or try to understand anything. Like there's not maybe a reason. And so I don't believe anybody can truly understand what this is for you and I outside of you and I.
Right.
We know what it is. It's deeply meaningful and it's like soul level connection in this experience of life that we get to have with each other. And frankly, I don't need anyone else to accept me or to understand me. Even though once in a while, like I've had life experiences where it's like, oh my gosh, I just wish I had somebody else to just talk with who could understand X, you know? But
Again, why
e-
we're so grateful for those friends we talked
right,
about in the first question.
right. But even in all of that, the deeper I've gone into me and myself, I don't find myself even having those moments of like, oh my gosh, this is so challenging. I just wish. Like, those are less because I just trust and love so differently and deeply now. You and just God and life itself. What would you add?
You know, I would definitely second the not needing other people to accept or approve of how we choose to live our life. But also, you and I talk about our dominant submissive relationship on the internet for a full-time job.
Yeah. And it's out there for everyone and anyone.
Yep. And also, that doesn't mean that we talk about it constantly with people who don't need to know.
Yeah.
We put
Valid.
we put a lot of this out there for people who are going to find it if they're looking for information about living this kind of relationship. But we don't sit down at the Thanksgiving table or with a whole bunch of family and start talking about what it means to be a dom.
Right.
So we're not seeking acceptance, we're not seeking approval, and we also aren't shoving this down anyone's throats who doesn't come to us looking for it, for information or knowledge or understanding.
Right. I would add that, it can easily there can easily be a fear of like, oh my gosh, what is someone else going to think? They probably don't even care, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who have those like nosy aunts and uncles or like whatever where people might pry. Absolutely. Very outspoken people in the world. But across the board, I think more people are focused on themselves than caring about
Yeah.
what everybody else is doing for real.
It's that scene from Jurassic Park that I think I maybe showed you recently, where the one scientist walks in and sits down at a restaurant and says to the other guy at the table, like, you probably shouldn't use my name. And he yells his name really loud across the restaurant a couple times. He's like, see, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, quit taking yourself so seriously. Nobody cares who you are.
Yeah.
Like, people are just living their own lives, and we sometimes assume that people are paying way more attention to us than they really are.
Yes, that's a good way of simplifying it.
And even doing what we do for a living, where, frankly, hundreds of thousands of people every month see our stuff, we've been noticed by people who like don't know us. Well, I have twice in how many years, like 4 years of putting this stuff out there and being seen by so many people online.
Yeah.
Twice been noticed by someone. So it isn't a big deal and people really don't care.
Yeah.
The next question is, I've noticed you use religious language. Are you Christian? So we kind of touched on this in the first episode a little bit, but add anything you feel appropriate there.
Well, um, when I hear the question, are you Christian? I don't know what that means to you. So I don't really know how to answer your question. I would have, in my past, I would have said, yes, I'm a Christian. But now stepping outside of the church and organized religion, um, I would just dismiss the question because I don't know the lens that you're seeing that through. And I would say, I believe in God. And as for religious language, even that is a perspective,
Mm-hmm.
that is a classification. And so we all have associations and word connotations and all of that in our language because that's what we have to do to try to describe. I mean, for agreement said words are symbols. And I loved that because it helped me see that it's just a way to try to describe, right? So just keep an open mind in all things and do some self-reflection around words and language and all of that too. And so um I don't identify with a lot of labels because I'm not putting myself in someone else's box. I can't know how you see what you're truly asking.
This is it was one of the very first things that I ever led you to that gave you an opportunity to think for yourself.
Yes.
And the specific thing I'm talking about was separating in your own mind God, religion.
Absolutely.
Because if you believe in God, would that God still exist if religion didn't? And what does
Right.
that actually mean about what each of those things are?
Right.
And when you start to ask questions, this is the last thing I'll say on religion before we move on, but this has been really important to my own inner reflection, but also to my my approach to life, not just around religion, but life in general. And that is, we have to be able to question everything. We
Yeah.
have to question everything. And people are afraid to question certain things, especially things like religion.
Oh, I used to be.
And I believe that only good things happen when we question our assumptions, our preconceived notions, our unquestionable things. Only good things happen when we do that. Because only two things can really come of it. Both of them are good. One of them is we find out by questioning it that we were right. And now we're more sure of it. We're more grounded in it. And our belief is even stronger. The other thing that can happen is we find out we were wrong in some way. And that's a really important thing to know, especially in something as big as spirituality, God, Christianity, religion, whatever it is. If you have missed something, you really want to know that.
Yeah.
And our experience has been that we have found personal experience with God by leaving the organization of religion behind and connecting with our souls, with our authenticity, with our truth. And in doing so, we've connected with God, really by questioning and throwing out things that didn't actually fit.
Well said.
So this next question comes from someone who it sounds like suffers from hurried woman syndrome.
Never heard of it.
Do you ever feel so pulled in every direction in vanilla life that your motivation or desire for dom, sub, or kink disappears or becomes muted?
If I lived a hurried life, I would. Um, yeah, in the way that I used to show up in life, um, my what was the last part of that question again?
I'll just read it again. Do
Okay.
you ever feel so pulled in every direction in vanilla life that your motivation or desire for dom, sub, or kink disappears or becomes muted?
Okay, I wanted to redecide how I wanted to answer this because I hear a classification there as well, like vanilla life and dom sub, and this is kink and that's not, and I'm here and I'm there and I'm everywhere. Yeah, if I lived that way, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have a turn on. Um, it's it's just it sounds like busyness and distraction and doing and yeah, hurry. And that's just very unlike how my life is, how I choose to be, the life experience that I choose, and the life experience you provide for me. And so we all have to be real about what our reality in life truly looks like, but we also have to be willing to question, am I giving my time and attention to things that actually aren't serving or life giving or necessary? And how can I slow down? How can I shift things in my life? How can I integrate these things? Now, I understand that maybe some people only have this as a bedroom thing. And so that's kind of the classification of going in and out of that. If that's where this question is coming from, again, looking at that non-bedroom life and having it support what you actually want to experience in life. Is that, if that's more sex and a better bedroom life, then really look at it through the lens of honesty with yourself on what can shift and help support that. And also maybe a ritual to come more into your body and detach from that stuff and however that works for you so you can fully be present and have fun and all of that.
Yeah. Ask your dominant for help.
Yes.
Speak up for what it is that you're asking for and what
Yeah.
you need, because I guarantee you your dominant wants you to be in the energy of wanting kink,
Yeah.
wanting to be in your submission, wanting sex, wanting whatever it is. That there's a reason that you want this together.
Right.
There's a reason you want this as a submissive. So if something is separating you from it, then you have to speak up and ask for help to connect back to it.
Yep.
Because we can't have our cake and eat it too when it comes to this.
Right. How can I live my life the same way but also just increase my turn on?
No. So there are a couple other questions we have coming up that touch on similar themes, but
Okay.
we'll come back around to those.
Okay.
Do you have advice for negotiating a contract? And I'll assume this question is like from the submissive side.
Okay.
What advice you would give to a submissive who's in the process of negotiating a contract?
Well, that's a really vague question, which is always challenging for me, to be honest. Um, well, first and foremost, we're going to say this, I'm going to say this again. Speak up for your own needs and what you want to experience. You can have a no. You get a no. You don't have to be a doormat and give up anything you don't want to. You don't have to agree to any experiences that you don't want to. Two, we have said this before too, like these contracts don't have to be like, they shouldn't be forever. Like have an end date so you can renegotiate.
Because things are going to change. Your desires are going to change.
Right.
What you want and don't want is going to change
Right.
as you go deeper and build more trust.
And I would say communication is important. So have a an understanding of where and how and when you get to communicate about the experience and how it's going. Because again, I don't know if this is just a bedroom thing or if this is like an all of life thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
If it's brand new or
right,
established relationship, all of that
right.
plays in.
So there's so much there, but I'm going to let you speak up and probably bring a little bit more clarity and preciseness.
The other thing I would really encourage in whatever this question is, whenever there's negotiations around contracts, this is a process that needs to be led by the dominant. The process of writing, creating
Yes.
the contract needs to be led by the dominant. And it needs to be openly reflected and spoken up about by the submissive.
Yes.
So where I would start is lots and lots and lots of conversation around what it is that you both want out of this. Why do you even want to be doing this in the first place? What do you get out of being a submissive? What does the dominant get out of being a dominant?
Mm-hmm.
Like what about it is fulfilling and fun and life-giving and energizing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you afraid of? What's the dominant afraid of? What's the submissive afraid of? What are desires? What are limits? And what are things you'd like to maybe be able to explore, even if you're not ready quite yet?
Yeah.
Speak up for all of that. And then the dominant needs to craft a contract.
Yep.
And present it to the submissive to look at and then have absolute ability to look through that and say what is and isn't okay, what she doesn't feel good about right now, like circle this and say maybe next time or whatever, and then put a damn expiration date on it and say we will renegotiate this in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever feels good to you. So you can come back to it and see what feels different.
Yeah. And don't rush that process. Like, really take some time with it. And if there's some things you're being asked of, like, sit with them and give an honest answer. Um, Make sure you're not people pleasing.
So the next question is, how do you deal with conflicts when they arise? And I will say that we have a whole episode of our podcast on conflict and disagreements in these dynamics. So for whoever asked this question, or if you're curious about that, look back and find the episode where we talk about that.
Yeah, well, we don't really have a lot of conflict here and there once in a while. Um, but we've kind of gotten to a point where, well, I'm going to speak from my side, I guess, that I'm, I feel like I'm at a level of authenticity and surrender that just feels so life-giving and easy and free. And I'm not scared. I'm not like, I've given up so much fear that I've lived under. And then also, like, our ability to communicate has grown, um, so that conflict doesn't really arise. But if there is something, again, like, I express myself true to myself, and I trust that you're going to receive me. And you know what? For some reason, if you have an ego flare and I have an ego flare, like, we're solid. We know that. We're solid in love and devotion for each other. And knowing that we both are going to own our side of it and trust that, like, we are really good at seeing it, even if it's not in the moment. Like, the clarity always comes, the making sense of everything. And so we seek connection if there's been any conflict. Like, it feels uncomfortable to live in a disconnect. And so we truly seek resolve um, as quickly as we can.
One of the things that I started doing when I got smart about leading us out of conflict is I stopped trying to resolve conflict when it was happening. I just let it be.
Yeah.
And I tried to learn from it. I tried to be present with it. I tried to hear what it was that you were experiencing
Hmm.
and understand you instead of fix the problem. And then resolution or repair from the conflict comes later after we've reestablished connection. Because we cannot find connection when we are in disagreement, when we're opposing each other. And this is something I've shared in the past on our podcast. We look at this like coming to the same side of the table.
Right.
Like, we're on the same team. And until we are sitting down next to each other, working together to resolve or repair whatever it was that broke, we're only going to be trying to make each other wrong.
Right.
The other thing that I'll say about why we don't have a lot of conflict anymore is because we've handled our conflict so damn well.
Yes.
And now we've built such deep trust for each other that we don't need to, like, there's conflict doesn't happen because I know you're going to come with me wherever I lead you. And you know I'm going to hear you, receive you, value your opinion, that you're going to be treated well in following me wherever it is that I take you. And we have that trust together because of how we've handled conflict in the past.
Yeah. So I want to speak to a couple things there because we haven't always been here.
No, 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 no.
So now, like I said, we have this willingness to connect, which it takes an ability to drop all walls and defenses and truly connect in love. Now, there was a time where that didn't feel as possible as quickly. And so there were times when we just needed a little bit of space from each other, even if that meant, because we spent a lot of time together, even, I've gone for a walk before. And then it's like this relief. As soon as I'm away from whatever the trigger was, the reactive conflict, it feels like my system can just take a deep breath and I can start to breathe into the truth of what I'm feeling, because sometimes you get so wrapped up and get so triggered and reactive that you lose the truth of what you're feeling, in my experience. And so then I can truly be with it and talk to myself in my head, and then bring back to you with a little bit more clarity for myself of this is really what I was experiencing, and maybe apologize and just seek that from a new place of like, just, okay, I'm going to set this down and not choose to be all up in my head.
It's very, very trust building to come out of conflict by having your partner own their side of what it is that they contributed to whatever it was that broke.
Both parties, yeah.
Yep. When both people are willing to sit down and say, here's the part I see that I played in that, and I'm sorry for my side in that, and you do the same,
Yep.
then all the walls are down. Okay, now we can really repair.
Yep.
Because I'm not pointing a finger at you, you're not pointing a finger at me. We are seeing that both of us probably, especially in the past, got activated somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And when we own the fact that, yeah, I wasn't showing up for you in the way that I want to, I wasn't holding that together, I wasn't being clear with you, whatever it was, and you can share with me, maybe, I clearly let my ego get the best of me and I let fear take hold and speak rather than letting trust and love speak. Like when you started doing that, it changed me. Like that changed something for me, because up until that point, disagreement with you basically felt like I just had to give in, back down, and wait for you to come around. Was the only thing that I could do. And when I'll never forget what that felt like, to have you be like, yeah, I'm sorry for, I clearly did this and this and this, and that didn't help. Like, oh, I don't just have to blame myself and basically wait for it to pass. That is very healing.
And I have one more point to add there. And let's say you had the conflict, you feel better, you're ready for repair. Doesn't mean your partner is. So share the desire to repair, to connect, to talk when you both can fully be present with each other, not trying to do this amongst children or busyness or whatever. And truly do it when you're both are ready and present and feel good about it. And don't chase it.
Yeah.
No rush. Like, and waiting for that can be really, really uncomfortable.
Yep.
But that discomfort can also show you something about yourself. Like, why is this so uncomfortable? In the waiting for repair, it can be a beautiful heart opening experience.
Absolutely maddening sometimes, but really, really important times to be with yourself.
Yeah, because you don't get to control your partner.
Nope. All right, let's go to a fun question.
Okay.
How long did it take you to switch out of duty mode to truly desiring sex? And how?
I can't give a time frame because it was a process that I even witnessed myself through that continuously deepened into more and more desire by facing down who and who I am as a sexual being, what does sex mean to me, and like facing my fears and my shame, like being able to rid the shame from my body along with my personal experience. I uncovered sexual trauma. That was a big piece that I had to work through that really covered it up for me. Didn't clearly know it was there until it was. And so, with a lot of patience, compassion for myself, but all while holding the desire for true sexual liberation, I like watched it slowly get more and more. And yeah, there was no moment where all of a sudden it was like, wow, it's all of a sudden there. I feel that it deepened and it kind of ebbed and flowed somewhat along the same time. I used to operate under the assumption that I have low libido because I heard that somewhere. And it was like, oh, I don't always desire sex. I guess I have low libido. And then I'm like, oh, wait, that's not completely true. Okay, what's going on with me? Why am I not desiring sex? Because I want to. I love it. And so how can I like experience more of it? And so it was just a ongoing journey of desiring more and willing to see myself and let go. Um, oh, and the other piece I just want to add in there is like the whole cycle for the feminine, the monthly cycle can be a little bit up and down, but also what I've witnessed in that journey month by month shifting is that my libido does not change as much as one may be led to believe like it should. It
Well,
doesn't.
as what it used to for you.
Well, yes, as it what it used to, but I'm also speaking about like the desire for more is also influenced by the man that you are and how you're showing up for me. And so as you've grown, I've watched and experienced my desire for you grow too. All while I'm doing my work, you're doing your work. So it's all intertwined. What do you have to share there?
Desire is in the feminine is a feeling.
Yeah.
So we can never force ourselves to feel.
Nope.
It's like there in the entire history of humanity, there have been exactly zero authentic forced feelings. And anytime we're feeling duty, the only thing that we're doing is trying to force ourselves to want something that we don't actually want. We might want to want it, but we don't really actually desire it.
Yeah.
And in this question, the word desiring was put in capital letters.
Oh,
So
okay.
like like there was an emphasis put on like actually desiring it, like really wanting it.
I want it all the time now, you guys.
Uh, I can vouch for that. You know, if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you've heard me say that early in our relationship, Dawn wore me out. I
Yep.
couldn't keep up with her. And that was an absolute revelation to me that was one of the things that's possible at that point in my life. Never experienced that. And then that slipped away.
Yeah.
And like, I never lost sight of the fact that that was possible because I'd experienced it with you and I knew we could create that. And that's what has driven a lot of this desire I've had to create a relationship where that is present because everything is good when In order, and this is why everything's good when there's lots of good sex. It's not the sex that causes it. It's that that's good sex is an automatic when everything in the relationship is clicking right. So you don't fix a sex problem by focusing on the sex. You fix the sex problem by focusing on yourself, your inner experience, your history, the the person with whom you're having or wanting sex needs to also be working on them on their self, because like I said, desire is a feeling.
Yep.
And you can't make yourself feel a feeling. There are zero forced authentic feelings. So your desire is a response to something. And that needs to be inspired in you by A, the person you're with, and B, the life that you are living. And that's why we talk about slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we talk about like feeling your feelings and speaking up and using your voice and all these things we talk about, because that's how you do your side of what allows the desire to be present. But it's still, you're not going to feel desire for someone who isn't inspiring it in you.
Yeah. Or if you're leaving it for the end of the day and you're tired and exhausted, you're probably not going to be quite as turned on and ready for sex if you're leaving it as the last priority.
Yeah. Next question here, this kind of tags back to one of the earlier ones. She says, my Dom and husband wants me working to help financially for now and saving for the future.
Excuse me.
But I feel like I can't be fully submissive because I'm so busy. And there wasn't a question in there. That's a statement.
It is. Yeah.
But I'll start with the answer to this one because
Good, because I need another sip of water.
there is a lack of speaking up happening here for this statement to get to this point of being made. Because you are going to need to share what your actual desires are. There's no way around this but having what might feel like really hard, uncomfortable, challenging, confronting, vulnerable conversations.
And share the feelings as well as the desires.
Mm-hmm. Because, again, this partner is saying, on one hand, I value financial security. I value security for the future. I value our financial abundance right now and in the future. And that's not a bad thing. And so there are things in that to appreciate. But also, this partner clearly wants your submission, wants you to follow, wants to like to create something else out of that relationship. And sometimes these things work exactly against each other. And your priorities are exactly how you spend your time. They're how you live your life. So you can say that you want something like more like deeper submission, more of your submissiveness from your partner. But if you're also saying, I need you to work X number of hours, I need you to make X amount of money because of finances, if that's working directly against the submission, then you need to, as the dominant, take a look at your priorities, because what you're telling her is that money is more important than our relationship and our connection. And if that's true, if that's where your values are, then you need to share those clearly and just say it and own it. Like right now, this financial piece of our relationship is more important to me than the dominant submissive dynamic. And here's why, and this is how we're going to handle it and how we're going to live. If that's not what your actual values are, if what really matters to you is the connection and the relationship, again, as the dominant, then you need to align your priorities, the way you're living your life, up with what your values are. You can't say one thing and have another, because that's going to feel like garbage to any submissive woman, because it's out of integrity.
Yeah. And I can even feel like the desire to please in that, but yet feeling exhausted and like you can't even give of yourself because you are exhausted. And you want to be able to do that. You want to feel like you have something to give. But if your energy is going somewhere else, you can feel really drained.
The next question is from someone who's a teacher, and working during the school year, she says, requires a lot of dominance from me. I hate that part, but I love working with my students. My role feels nurturing and feminine, but also requires a lot of my masculine. Do you have any advice for me?
Well, kind of just sounds like a truth right there. I mean, let's be real. When I heard the word teacher, I was like, oh, yeah, in charge,
Yep.
responsibilities. Like you can't negate certain parts of a job or act like they don't exist at all. And so, gosh, I would try to, the duties that I had to do, can I fill myself up first? You know, like let's say you're doing all of this work right after your school day and you're feeling like you need a little bit of me time. Can you take the me time first for 10, 15 minutes before you jump back into some of that other work? Can you make it more fun? Are you doing things you don't really have to do? You know?
And are you doing things that you don't want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like we said in the beginning, one of the very first questions in part one, submission, surrender, feminine embodiment, all of this stuff, it does not mean you just sit around and do nothing.
Right.
So, in this question is, I love working with my students. It
Mm-hmm.
feels nurturing.
Mm.
It feels good to this person to be doing what she does.
Yep.
So if that is if that does enough to fill you, that this job feels like something that you can do from your heart, the pieces that require more of your, like, your domminess, being in charge and bossing those kids around, can you bring all of that from your heart, rather than feeling like, oh God, I gotta like tell these little brats to shut up?
Yeah, the energy that you bring to it is important because, like, I, in my experience, I've even watched the lens that I see and experience things through, even if they're a doing, it's just different.
Mhm.
And so, very good addition here because this doesn't mean that we're never going to use our masculine. But it can really be easy to live in the, well, I'm supposed to be more in my feminine. Not even true. Like you have to approach life in the way that is real to you. And so really tune into your energy behind the other things that are, yeah, using your masculine in more of a doing. Um, and tune into is their judgment.
This is There's so much bullshit around my masculine and my feminine that I almost wish that these words were just thrown in a blender and just sliced and diced and thrown in the trash. Because as a woman asking this question, you have both a feminine energy and masculine energy.
Yeah.
Your masculine energy as a woman is your heart. It's your expression. You are still living outwardly, and you have to.
Yep.
Your feminine energy as a woman is in your womb. It's in your vagina. It's in your pussy. And that means both sexually, and then sexually points to the bigger picture in the physical, meaning that as a woman, you are receptive in the physical.
Hmm.
So you have a masculine as a woman, and that masculine is the expression of your heart. And so you always are going to be in your masculine to some extent as a woman. It's just, can you do it from your heart rather than like forcefully, begrudgingly doing shit that I think I have to do? Like, can you just bring all of that love that you have for your students? Can you bring all of that love you have for what this job gets to be and how it fills you up and what, like, the reason why you probably went into it in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just bring the dummy stuff you have to do? Can you do that from your heart? Can you do all of that as an expression of your heart? Can you bring all of your love and gratitude and joy of what this job is for you and why you want to do it? Can you give all of it from your heart? That is your masculine as a woman. Your heart is your masculine as a woman. Your heart is your masculine as a woman. And you have it, you need to use it, you need to express it
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Otherwise, you're going to get all stuck and bound up and end up in your head if you're not sharing your heart. And a job that feels nurturing and loving and fulfilling and joy giving to you is a beautiful way to use your masculine.
Yep. Yeah. And can you redefine the lens that you're seeing some of that other work through,
Mm-hmm.
essentially?
Yeah, 100%. And I put the next question right after this just because it's kind of another one last work related question where someone
Okay.
asked, do you have any advice for women still working 40-hour weeks? So the real thing I want to do here is, do you have any other advice for women who are still working in those 40-hour jobs or just who need to work?
Well, you got to fill your own cup up for one thing. So if you're spending a lot of time, do you love your job or do you not love your job? Like, there's a lot of other questions there because this isn't a thing of like, you shouldn't work, right?
Right.
Like, that's not what is being discussed here. But you have to be willing to question everything. And that's including the job that you're working in, that you chose. And you have to be honest about the fact that you have a choice in where you're putting your time and your energy in work and in your home life outside of work. And so I guess that's my first advice is, do you even want that job? Are you acting like you don't have a choice? And then two, if you have to have a job, then truly accept that fact that that is your reality right now. Because any amount of like begrudging judgment, like just low vibe energies is going to suck life out of you. That's really unnecessary.
Yeah. Find what is in this for you because you may desire to not need to work. But if that is a necessity of your life right now, then to your point, try to work in something that gives you life. If you're
Mm-hmm.
spending 40 hours a week at a job, that's minimum half of your waking hours, 5 days a week, probably more by the time you factor commuting and all the other stuff that goes into it. So can you do something that with that time that fills you up rather than drains you? You probably can if you're willing to be creative and think outside the box and maybe question things you haven't been willing to question. But then also, if that is a necessity of your life, look at what can you receive from this if you do find it necessary in your life. What can you find in and learn about yourself in this experience? What joy can you find in the people you get to interact with? Find the things, what things, here's a really good one. What about this triggers the fuck out of you? Because that'll give you something to do on your commute to really sit with what that trigger is inside of you. Triggers are all gifts, opportunities to see the unhealed pain inside of yourself. So wherever the job triggers you or pisses you off, when you get really upset by one of your coworkers, a job that you don't necessarily want to be working can be full of gifts for you to see parts of yourself that you couldn't otherwise see unless you got triggered or pissed off by it.
Yeah. And while you still have this job, keep expressing your desire for whatever you truly want to experience
Mm-hmm.
on the regular. Like live in it, desire it, all while holding the capacity of just accepting where you're at, which means having the job you have right now. But believe in possibility, expansion, open to receive something even better. But you also have to believe it.
Yeah.
And not be a victim of your circumstances right now. Like that outlook on life, that energy is everything.
Yep. An abundant mindset, a growth mindset
Yeah.
is everything, because a mindset based in scarcity and a mindset based in lack and in resignation,
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to find more confirmations of what you already believe to be true.
Right.
And if you believe in the abundance of the world, if you believe in the possibilities and expansiveness,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to find more of that.
Right.
Next question. What's your favorite date that Andrew has ever taken you on?
Oh, wow.
We've had a lot of them over 15 and a half years. So this is a very big question.
And I don't remember them all. So, obviously, the first one, which I think we talked about on a recent podcast, we celebrate Friday the 13th because that was our first date. So, all of those are so fun. We do a nice dinner. I dress up in a nice dress, stilettos, sometimes get my nails done. Um, I just love fine dining. I love good wine and food. And sometimes we do an event after. Um, so gosh, it's really hard to pick just one. Oh man, because they're all just so great. I mean, yeah, I don't really know how else to go deeper on those.
The Friday the 13th are all really special. We've had some fun weekend getaway dates that have
Yes.
been really fun. We went to Denver
Yep.
one time where we just, like, long weekend, I think 3-day weekend in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
And we have done that to Nashville.
Yep.
So, some of those little getaways that are special, but some of our best, most fun dates that we have is when we just go find a band and you get surprised by the quality and talent of the musicianship, both having musical backgrounds, having musical histories. When you go see a band and you don't know much about them, and you see some really special talent,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's musical talent or performance talent. We saw a band a few weeks ago that they did, what did they call it? Guilty pleasure pop rock.
Yeah, I want to share this because this was the night that, remember on the podcast, we were doing date night and we were talking about that.
Yes, this was the dating podcast, probably somewhere around episode 36.
Yeah, so this night, dressed up, went out for a cocktail and then had dinner, which was all fun and delicious. And then we went over to some more live music that we found at a brewery. So we listened to the band out back in the tent. They were having a celebration. And so this was like 7 to 10. And then we're ready to leave and we walk out front and there's another band that plays from 10 to midnight.
Yeah, and we are
So,
usually in bed by 10, so for us to be walking out the door to go home at 10, we're already a little behind schedule, but we
yeah,
were having fun.
which
And,
on date nights, like, it's not, we're not so strict.
yeah, but we're
Like,
like, oh, there's another band starting. Let's hang out and watch them.
yeah. And yeah, so we kind of danced and sang along with the first one. We really danced and sang along with the second one, which was the Guilty Pleasures band. We were in the front row.
Yep. And we were, yeah, 2 hours standing right in front of the speakers, right in front of the stage. And this band was so fun because they were like, they had so much fun on stage.
They had personality too.
Yeah. And just tons of energy.
Hmm.
They were all, my guess, having been in bands before, my guess is that all of these people are probably musicians in other bands, and this is like their little fun side project.
Well, if you can tell they just enjoy what they do, period. So,
Yeah, but exceptional talent across the board with every single musician
yep.
on that stage, plus stage presence and fun. And so,
Plus, that drummer was playing with them for like the first time after 48 hours of knowing them.
yeah, yeah, fill-in drummer who was one of the most fun drummers I've ever watched
Yeah.
play. So
Anyway,
anyway,
that was a fun night.
yes, so those are some of the most fun when you just stumble on unexpected fun.
Yeah.
And like the spontaneous piece of like after 15 years to just spontaneously say, hey, let's go over here and see what's happening, and then end up spending 5 hours there listening to live music and dancing unexpectedly.
In
Those,
my stilettos.
yeah, your feet were messed up from that, but those are still some of my favorite memories that we keep making,
Yes. That's probably the best theme that we have.
especially in now empty nest life, where the responsibilities of being home and doing like mom shit just isn't there anymore. So now we can stay up later and have more fun because there's less obligations at home.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Let's end on a fun one. Do you have any tips on how to get out of my head to stop seeing sex as dirty or wrong?
Well, why do you think it's dirty? Why do you think it's wrong? What are those belief systems in there? You have to be willing to start challenging them and seeing what the beliefs are. Do you have fears? Like, who put those beliefs in you? Was it something probably going back to childhood? Was this what religion taught you? Mom, dad, friends,
And
any,
own the part that you played in absorbing those beliefs, because someone
yeah,
else may have given them to you, but even when you were a kid, you still were the one who absorbed them.
right. So, since you were the one who absorbed them, you have the power to change them too. And so, my heart feels you because it's a fragile, delicate process. At our essence, we are a sexual being. We all came from sex. It's how we are here. And so I truly believe that it is a gift of pleasure that we get to experience, but it's going to take some work. It's going to take some patience and compassion, and it might take a version of therapy, like really tuning into some of those areas of what are these belief systems and what do I actually want to believe about it? And being willing to start choosing something different and then letting yourself see what you need to let go of.
I would also say this kind of thing is really important to focus on what it is that you desire
Yeah.
more than focusing on what you don't want.
Yes.
Because if you
Always.
keep focusing on how do I stop feeling like sex is dirty and wrong,
Yes.
you're continuing to reinforce the belief that sex is dirty and wrong.
Absolutely.
So tune in instead to the times that you've enjoyed sex,
Hmm.
to the times you've enjoyed pleasure, the times that you've had fun,
Yep.
the times that you've maybe been a little sexually wild if you have those experiences in the past, fantasies, um, sexy books, like anything that stirs up your pleasure, your enjoyment, to be with that and to try to bring acceptance to that. And then when the things that come up, that bubble up to the surface as resistance to connecting to that desire, to that pleasure, to the enjoyment,
Mm-hmm.
deal with those and leave them behind. But don't make those the focus. Make
Right.
where you're going and what you desire and the experience you want the focus.
2 books I read were Come As You Are. I don't remember all of what was in that. It's so long ago. Would that be, I think, a good place to start?
Yeah, it's a good book to basically just kind of reset your relationship with sex.
Yeah. And then is it My Secret Garden? The book about fantasies?
Yes, I believe so. By Nancy Friday.
Yeah, I read both of those. And for me at the time, they were very helpful in connecting to other women's sexual experience and hearing what fantasies they had, and like just to bring some awareness and acceptance to myself and start to shift into who I want to be as a sexual being.
Well, thank you for tuning in to both part 1 and part 2 of the Ask a Sub Q&A. And if you have questions for us that you'd like to hear us answer in a future podcast, or things that the conversations we've had here brought up for you in hearing us talk about them, please leave them in the comments on our YouTube, or you can always reach out to us through the contact page on our website, and we can address some of those in a future podcast as well. So again, we really appreciate you being with us. And for all of you who sent in questions, thank you. I hope we were able to address yours, as many of them as we could. We got to here in over 2 hours of answering people's questions.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you so much for being here with us, as always.
Thank you. Goodbye.